So we are absolutely ready. We're a little unusual in relations where, because we're on the ground in Georgia, we are sort of fronting up the initial exploratory stuff. By the way, we have in terms of where there is a need for investment in infrastructure and logistics, and whether that comes from us
This is your fault. Oh, wow. Thanks.
Traditionally, America from Russia. Still is.
There we go.
European companies are less and less comfortable with that. Becoming more of an issue financially because of high insurance costs.
I sometimes wonder, though, when I get put forward for these things, whether it's for example, it's a subject of my life to say something. They want me on this week.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to this high-level panel here at the EBRD 2024 Annual Meeting and Business Forum. I'm Melinda Crane, and it is a great honor to be your moderator as we explore the role of South Caucasus in developing sustainable trade, energy, and logistics routes. And as we saw there in our short film, recent developments, including both short and longer-term geopolitical shifts, are reinforcing this region's enormous potential as a bridge and vital hub linking Europe and Asia. Over the past few years, we've seen a surge in foreign investment as European firms seek to boost supply chain resilience. Trade between the EU and South Caucasus is on the rise, as we saw in the numbers just a moment ago, and governments have been working to improve connectivity within the region and beyond. The EBRD's assessment for the current year underlines how important it is to sustain that commitment with investment programs, expanding trade, energy, and logistics corridors that link the region with global markets. And as we saw also in that short video, there are challenges to be overcome, and that's why we're here today. We want to talk about both the promise and the challenges. Our high-level panel brings together policymakers as well as leaders from globally active companies that are present here in the region to share perspectives on both and to explore how international cooperation can ensure a bright future for South Caucasus. We're eager also to hear from you, dear guests. You can share your questions in the latter part of the session, either live or online. If you want to send a question to us online, please go to our event tools Slido using the barcode that you see right now on the screen, or type in to the event website the number hashtag 2487839. That's 2487839. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our speakers, beginning with Bruce Johnson, seated here next to me. He is Director of Corporate Finance and Treasury at the renewable energy company Masdar, which is expanding its footprint across South Caucasus and Central Asia. Great to have you with us. Thanks for joining. Seated next to him is Heinrich Kerskens. He is project lead and director of board projects at the logistics services provider Rhenus, which is based in Germany and active in markets around the world, including South Caucasus, also, and Central Asia. Wonderful that you can join us. Then it is my great pleasure to welcome on behalf of our host, EBRD, the Director and Head of Infrastructure Eurasia at the bank, Ekaterina Miroshnik. Her team provides debt and equity financing for public, private, and PPP projects in transport, municipal, and hospital infrastructure. It's wonderful that we can hold this discussion today under EBRD auspices. And I'm very pleased to welcome Ian Rollison. He is Chief Commercial Officer at APM Terminals Poti. The company is based in the Netherlands. It is an international port terminals and logistics operator that plays a leading role here in the South Caucasus region and at the port Poti. And finally, it is a pleasure to welcome from the European Union Commission, the director at the Commission's DG NEAR, its directorate that is responsible for European neighborhood policy and enlargement negotiations. And Adrian Kurali is in charge of Neighborhood East, as well as institution building. It's great that you could join us. Thank you so much. So I would like to begin with an overview at some of the opportunities and challenges. And I'm going to ask the companies on the panel what role connectivity plays in their decisions to expand operations here. And I'll start, if I may, with transport and logistics. So that means Heinrich Kerskens and Ian Rollison. Heinrich Rhenus has been present in this region for 30 years. Why are you now deepening that engagement, and how do you assess current trends overall? You should have a microphone right next to you.
The next.
It's on your right.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't saw it. So yeah, Rhenus is in the region, which means Central Asia, in 30 years. and on the European side. So we are not active in Armenia and Georgia yet, but that will change very soon. And I got the job of our board in 2021 to do things along the Middle Corridor, or the New Silk Road, or however you call it, from the European side. It's one of the global gateway views. And then all the things, geopolitical things came along, and now from a job where you do one project after the other, I'm now in a job doing 13 projects at the same time, because everything has to hurry up now. And Central Asia, South Caucasus, including Turkey, is one of the 2 focus regions of Renus. The other region is Latin America. And so we have a very, very strong focus here, and plan some investments, and try to increase our transport. In China, we already have 25 locations. In India, it's 74. So we want to close that gap, and that's the thing we are working on. And we try to do that mostly on sustainable modes of transport. But to be honest, actually, we do most of our transport still with a truck, because the rail systems are very unreliable, and sometimes we have got clients who accept that, but it's not very often the case. So we try to help together with EBRD and other players in the whole market, talking a lot to governments to improve the infrastructure. And that's our idea of doing that. Just to give you one idea of the figures, last year we did on the Middle Corridor a little bit more than 5,000 containers. And this year we are planning to do the 60,000.
Whoa. Okay. Factor of 12. Thank you very much. Let me jump over to Ian, if I may, and ask whether you're seeing that same kind of surge that Heinrich has described, and also how APM's own operations and future investments at the port of Poti reflect the prospects for trade with and through South Caucasus.
Yeah, thank you. So the growth in trade through Georgia and through the whole of South Caucasus and Central Asia has been quite extraordinary over the last 2 years. Last year we saw 174% growth in our container throughput alone. Now that was, of course, partly driven by the closure of Ukraine as a route and Russia as a route into Central Asia, and so therefore cargo looking for alternative ways to serve this market. This has put us in a position where the plans we already had for expansion of the port, and our intention is to double the capacity. Today we have a capacity of a little over 500,000 TEU 20-foot containers, and we will add another 400,000 TEU, which means we'll be just shy of 1 million TEU of capacity. That said, last year we actually handled more than the rated capacity through the port, so this expansion is very much needed. And we see that there are a number of bottlenecks between the Black Sea and the Chinese border and all the countries in between. One of which absolutely has been port capacity, and that we're working on now. So we will develop this expansion, which should be operational by the end of 2026. And in the meantime, we're investing smaller amounts in various debottlenecking processes through improvements in efficiency, better coordination with customers, some small investments in extra capacity. But then the other major challenge that we face, and I think it's something that I'm probably echoing Heinrich when I say this, is the coordination amongst the various logistics service providers in the region, and particularly the infrastructure providers, railways, crossing the Caspian Sea, the ports on either side. And most importantly, the coordination and communication between all those players is not acceptable, quite simply put.
Thank you very much. And we are going to come back to exactly that point in our second round of discussion. The overarching title of the EBRD's annual meeting is, of course, Delivering Impact Together. And we want to talk about exactly that a little bit later on. Let me go now to Bruce Johnson, if I may. And Masdar is undertaking major solar investments in the region, including plants in Armenia, as well as Azerbaijan and Georgia. Do you see this region as a potential renewable energy exporter to Europe?
Thanks very much. Before I answer that question, if I could just give a brief introduction to Masdar, because I'm not sure everyone in the room will be familiar with the company. Also, thank you to EBRD for having me on this panel. Little surprised, to be honest with you, that I did get invited based on some of the negotiations I've had with some of the people in this room. But
oh, tell us more.
I only have 3 minutes. So
that's true.
I'm on the clock, so I've got to be careful. Well, yeah, I'm just running it down. So Masdar is an 18-year-old company. We're a pure-play renewables company. We develop projects around the world, from the US, UK, Europe, the South Caucasus, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, Sub-Saharan Africa, just about anywhere, right? 100% owned by the government of Abu Dhabi, 3 very strong shareholders in the form of Mubadala, who some of you will be familiar with, TAQA, and Abu Dhabi's national oil company. And we have a mandate to become a global renewables powerhouse. So as of today, Masdar is the fastest growing renewable energy company in the world. We're adding the equivalent of a 200 megawatt solar PV project to our portfolio every single week, right? So we will hit a target of 100 gigawatts of renewable capacity under management by 2030. If not, we'll exceed it.
And how does this region play into that?
How does this region play into it? Right. So a lot of projects in developed economies, but also we're very much looking at scalable opportunities in developing countries, right? So we're an A+, A2 rated entity. We don't get to be an investment grade company like that if every single dollar of capital we're deploying and every single dollar of risk that we're taking is in developing countries that are rated sub-investment grade, right? But we can exist as a vehicle through which investors, for example, in our bond program, can channel money into countries like Armenia, right? Armenia, the South Caucasus, CIS countries in general, they represent a huge opportunity, right, for a company like Masdar, because they're abundant in terms of the resources needed for solar PV projects and wind projects, so lots of irradiation, lots of wind, right? You also have very supportive partner governments, right? So they kind of present to us opportunities to invest and at scale. Because we're not looking to do a 50 megawatt project or a 10 megawatt project. What we're looking to do is gigawatts. That's the mandate we have from the government of Abu Dhabi. We need to get as much bang from every buck as we can. And that means me. Like, I don't have more than 24 hours in a day to work on a project. So where does the government of Abu Dhabi want me working, or what do they want me working on? They want me working on something that translates into gigawatts. And that's what we have in the South Caucasus. We've successfully inaugurated projects in this region to date. We have a few others that are under development, and we'll soon reach final investment decision and go forward. And there will be more and more. And to your question,
yeah, one sentence.
Do
linked to Europe.
It will be an exporter into Europe? That is not a core part of our investment thesis. I believe this region has a lot to do at home. It is looking to convert more of its electricity market to renewables by 2030. And so I think the focus is at home. For us, it doesn't really matter. As long as the scale of opportunity is there, we will invest.
Thank you very much. Let me now go to the 2 international institutions on the panel. And the EU and EBRD together did a very in-depth study on sustainable transport connections between Europe and Central Asia that identified key steps that are needed to realize South Caucasus' potential as a hub, essentially its aim for the region as a whole. So let me ask both of you to talk about the study's findings. How can this region make the most of its position linking Europe and Asia. And I'll start, if I may, with Director Kiraly.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. And I would like to also thank EBRD for the invitation to be at the event and also to be in this panel. And before answering the question, I would maybe like to zoom out a little bit on the wider geopolitical context of what we are living today.
Can you hold your mic a little closer?
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
So, of course, if we talk about, if we see what happened in February 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we have seen that apart from causing a lot of suffering, destruction, and loss of lives, it has also led to disruption of the pre-existing trade relations and also undermining global food and energy security. And it has created a sense of urgency and also in relation to the development of trade routes between Europe and Asia that would bypass Russia. In this regard, of course, the Trans-Caspian corridor is not only a potential to become a reliable trade route between Europe and Central Asia, but it also offers important opportunities to foster closer integration among the countries that are along this corridor. One important element is that if we look at statistics, we have seen that the trade route has increased significance because the exports to Europe have been growing by 34% and imports to Europe by 22% if we look at the period of 2019 to 2022. And of course, with the start of the war against Ukraine, a recent World Bank study has also shown that the trade volumes are supposed to be actually tripling within the next decade. So, of course, it is important then how we look at the region, and this is why we carried out the study together with EBRD, and I'm sure that the colleague will also highlight the elements of the infrastructure projects. Actually, we have looked at 33 hard infrastructure investments and 7 soft connectivity measures that we have identified together. On my side, what is important to stress is the one corridor approach, which is related to ensure sustainability and multimodality of transfer flows in the Trans-Caspian route. And in this regard, we look at 3 key areas of development. One is, of course, to prioritize the investments in sustainable infrastructure, in railway, roads, and also in intermodal transportation in the Trans-Caspian corridor. But also, we need to make sure that these investments are cost-effective. And of course, for the EU, very important is to promote, of course, green technologies and clean energy in this regard. Second, what is also very important is to further promote the integration of the South Caucasus into the international transport networks. And this is what we are doing through our economic and investment plan in the EU and supporting investments in this regard. And then finally, a third very important element for us is regulatory reforms and harmonization of procedures so that that creates conditions for seamless trade. So, of course, these are all interconnected and they help to unlock really the vast economic potential of the region and the corridor that would link, of course, Central Asia to Caucasus to the EU. And then one last final element, if I may, which is, of course, very important, that would actually contribute to the efficiency of this trade route is, of course, the normalization of the processes and the peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, because, of course, that would obviously facilitate opening of regional transport links between Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey through Armenia. We are working on this with the countries and also liaising with Turkey so that if this happens, then we could move in and increase our investments.
Thank you very much. And picking up there at the end on the point made by Ian that the countries, there's not enough dialogue amongst the countries themselves. Let me go over to Director Miroshnik now to also talk a little bit about that study and your conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And thank you for all the panelists to being here and discussing South Caucasus and its potential in terms of connectivity, among other things. So, of course, in terms of the study, we've done the study. It was EBRD-led, EU-funded study, which basically identified the potential for the Middle Corridor. I have to admit that also the World Bank also did the study covering Central Asia, Caucasus, and Turkey. What we see at the moment, of course, the Middle Corridor has potential. Potential demand for traffic along the Middle Corridor is likely to increase threefold by 2030 and sevenfold by 2040. But certain things need to be done. At the moment, the corridor is a bit slow and unpredictable. So therefore, time-insensitive goods move along the corridor because the time you spend, if you would like to ship your goods, can be from 14 days to 60 days. So the idea is to make all these investments to increase the speed along the corridor. And what investments we are talking about? The EBRD-led EU-funded study identified $18.5 billion of investments needed only in Central Asia. The World Bank study identified $7 billion of short-term investments, some in Kazakhstan, some in the Caucasus, and in Turkey as well. So we are talking about lots of money to be invested in the coming years. Of course, some of this investment will be realized, and of course, the governments will have to play a role to make all these investments happen. But also, there should be room for private sector, and we are talking about logistics, we're talking about port operators, and we also have to think about PPPs and enabling environment for example, PPPs to happen. What we also see in terms of the soft measures, I would like to echo EU that, of course, it's tariff regulation, digitalization, making sure that it's easy to move the goods around the corridor, harmonization of procedures. It's very critical. Mm-hmm. But of course, we from our side happy to consider support our countries. But of course, a lot to be done in the coming years. Mm-hmm.
And I want to drill a little deeper on that in our second round when we now talk perhaps in more detail about cooperation and delivering impact together. Let me begin once again with the private sector actors to get their view on this. And if I can just refresh our what we've heard there, essentially, the EBRD EU World Bank study did recommend both investments in hard infrastructure, as we heard from Adrian, and also soft connectivity enablers, from regulation to customs, digitalization, border controls, and so on. So I'd like to ask the three companies what you consider the most crucial priorities. Who are your most important partners as you seek to expand operations and address bottlenecks, and what you most need from them? And I'll just go, again, straight down the three. So, Heinrich, if you get us started.
So I need 30 minutes now.
I'm sorry, you can't have it.
But, okay, it's very easy. So you all must have heard the term supply chain. So it's a chain. And a chain is always as strong as the weakest part. And so when we look at Ian's terminal, he is building up a capacity of 900,000 TEU, which is very nice. And some of these goods might go via the Trans-Caspian Sea because the capacity is not there. So most of the stuff has to stay in Georgia and Armenia then. Because when I look at the port of Baku in Alat in Azerbaijan, it's now has a capacity of roughly 100,000 TEU, and they want to build up with the new basin of the port up to 500,000 TEU. And when I look further on the other side of the Caspian Sea, to Kazakhstan, we have got the port of Aktau. There is a capacity of maximum 70,000 TEU today, and they want to build up with a new container hub, they call it. It's 230,000 TEU. There's also some actions in the port of Kyrgyz, which is a little bit south, but it's more or less general cargo ports, which can also do containers. And on the other side, we've got in Turkmenistan, Turkmenbashi. They have now a lack of usage, but the capacity there is 200,000 TU. So when I count all that together, then you can see that there is a coordinated action needed. So all the ports have to talk to each other, and all the railway companies have to talk to each other to create the right capacity for the tracks, which means the length of the trains are important, so I need overtaking tracks and all that stuff, which is really necessary. So everything has to be done in one. And I wrote an article for a newspaper last month, and I was telling there that we need some action, as we know that from Europe, as we have very, very successful our 10T corridors. Mm. And today we have got very many light tower projects along the South Caucasus and the Central Asian states, but it's hardly any coordinated supply chain setup. Even if we have a plan which is the second best solution, it's a better thing as we do it now. And that's the very important thing I want to point out in that. And last point I want to point out is for private investment, it's very necessary and essential that we have got a law certainty. And that's not everywhere, or it's everywhere in the beginning, but not really in the thing that the argumentation of big investments are very difficult in those countries here, especially for me. And to get all this running, we need not also look at the infrastructure, but also there is a lack of shipping capacity on the Caspian Sea. Mm-hmm. And the Caspian Sea is shrinking. So we need shipping capacity which especially can deal with low water situations and a little bit with ice. And the other thing is the lack of locomotion capacity in South Caucasus and the lack of platforms in the whole Central Asia and South Caucasus. And otherwise everything will go by truck, and then we've got a situation like this winter time, where the trucks are waiting between 14 days and 3 months just in the ports to get the ferry. That's this actual situation, and so we should work on a coordinated thing to solve that. Otherwise, we stick up the light towers, nothing will happen.
So essentially, the point about coordination has now been made by several of you. Before you put your mic down, Heinrich, who can drive that? Who, for you, would be key to have on board to get that kind of coordination?
End of January, I had been in Brussels. There was a conference, and this conference was investing in Global Gateway. And I met you, for instance, there, and it was very good pleasure. And so we've got, the European Union has got a big pot of money. We say it's 300 billion, but it's rubbish, okay. But I've learned when I was a young boy, who pays has the saying.
Right. Okay. Adrian, I saw you looking ambivalent about that. I will come to you in a moment, but let me first get more input from the companies. So, Bruce, you told us that your projects essentially have an important role to play in the local economies. To what degree is there coordination in terms of the power markets here? Are they equally siloed to what we're hearing in terms of transport and logistics? And how are you working with governments? You said you find your government partners are very willing and able partners. Is that always a one-to-one between, or do you have some coordinating role as well?
Okay, first of all, I'm the finance guy.
I know.
At Masdar.
I know.
Right,
yeah.
So it's very difficult for me to answer that question. So I can tell you how I see things from my perspective, right? And I can probably answer the question, what do I think is needed to sort of make things happen more readily, like they need to happen in various jurisdictions, including the South Caucasus, right? Masdar is not a company that needs, for example, EBRD or any other development finance institution involved in our projects. The reality is we have not necessarily an infinite amount of capital at our disposal, but we have tremendous amounts of capital at our disposal. One of the main reasons that we involve EBRD, and I'm started to worry I might not get invited back, but one of the reasons we involve the likes of EBRD, FMO, and other multilateral development banks is they sort of protect Masdar from its own worst excesses, right? If we were just to do everything kind of on balance sheet, I imagine we wouldn't necessarily do things the right way from an environmental and social perspective, from a business case perspective, right? I think, and this is perhaps slightly philosophical, I find that perhaps the biggest impediment to rolling out renewable projects, whether it's here or elsewhere, is people. We've sort of created the climate crisis, and we now stand in our own way in terms of solving it, right? Because if we sort of take the view that, well, there's droughts and floods and fires happening all around the world, increasingly, we've got to do something about it, right? And we've got to do something about it pretty quickly. And as far as I'm aware, one of the biggest sort of components of the solution is doing renewables. We need to do renewables, and we need to roll them out pretty rapidly here in the South Caucasus and elsewhere. What I would like to see when we come to deal with EBRD and others and our partner governments is almost a militaristic standardization of the way things are done, right? Let's all just agree, right? We've got a massive problem. It doesn't do anyone any favors if we sit around debating and negotiating every single iota of every single new deal, right? Because our children and our children's children won't thank us in 20, 30, or 50 years' time if they can't go outside. Hey, mummy and daddy, why can't I go outside? Well, that sucks, but, we got a really good deal 20 years ago. We managed to, get one over EBRD or FMO. Forget it. Just put egos to one side. We try this on every single new deal. A zealous adherence to standardization. We live with what we litigated and agreed in the past. But we don't always get that from partner governments, and we don't always get that from the financiers either, right? But we're still trying. And I sort of feel like maybe the only way to take the ego, and it seems to be ego, out of the equation to get these projects done faster so that we can solve this climate crisis, or at least get close to solving it, is maybe it's AI. Maybe AI is a solution, because maybe AI doesn't have ego. When the computer's negotiating across the other side of the table, what do you think of this materiality qualifier? Well, I don't care. Does it matter? No. Okay, done.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ekaterina to make a mental note of this, but I will just jump to Ian first to give you also time to think a bit. So essentially we're talking about not only coordination amongst the regional governments, but also amongst the different partners when it comes to the investment side. But Ian, first to you to talk a little bit about where you see the biggest challenges on coordination and how they can be fixed.
Well, I think I should just stop now and leave it with Bruce, because I agree wholeheartedly that's more important than anything else we're talking about here. But in all seriousness, though, I would echo a lot of what Heinrich says. The various actors have bottlenecks. We see particular challenges in the South Caucasus, particularly Georgia and Azerbaijan, less so in Armenia, on the rail infrastructure, a lack of passing places, so therefore there's a limit to the number of trains you can run through the system, a lack of rolling stock, of the right kind of rolling stock for the different kinds of cargo, and a lack of reliable locomotives. And one of the things I think that really should be looked at is something that's actually only become apparent relatively recently, to me at least, is historically, of course, the rail network across this region runs on a wide gauge rail. So it's the former Soviet rail system. It is not the same as China, as Turkey, as Europe. What this means is that if you need a new locomotive or you need new rolling stock, then you need to have it built in this region. Now, the biggest location for sourcing that historically to have been Ukraine and Russia, neither of which are manufacturing and exporting to this region now. And what this means, therefore, is that there's a massive lack of rolling stock and locomotives. I was talking to a customer here in Armenia who said they found an old locomotive in a shed somewhere with no documentation at all. They just bought it, and now they're doing anything they can to get the thing running because they are in such great demand. In Poti, we have 14 container terminals dotted around the city. We have 2 locomotives to serve all of those terminals, one of which doesn't work most of the time. We have a problem, and it's not just in Poti. And the reality is, but it also comes down to, we have a locomotive, or the use of a locomotive in the port. We're not allowed to use it on the Georgian public rail network, because only GR can, Georgian Railway. But they only have one working locomotive in Poti. And the same is replicated across the whole of the rail network. So availability of equipment, speeds. The rail infrastructure is actually pretty good because, of course, again, that dates back to the Soviet era when it was the key way that transportation was done around this region. But the rolling stock, the locomotives, that doesn't exist. And I would say that is one thing. And then the second, again, is, let's not sort of rehash it, communication, coordination, alignment between the countries and across borders.
Thank you very much. I will now go again to the two international institutions. There's a lot indeed to unpack in what we've heard, but Adrian, if you would also especially address this question of what role can the EU play? The EU, with its own corridors, has achieved quite a bit in the last 10 years. To what extent can you help assist the coordination here in this region? What vehicles, what means do you have? Besides money, about which you were slightly ambivalent.
Actually, I wanted to start with that. I think of course, the EU is a big donor, and also in this region. But I think that we should not overestimate, the amount of financial means that we have. Also, because unfortunately there are so many crises going around everywhere, and which means that the EU has to step in many areas, in many countries. I mean, I don't have to go very far. If you look at the Middle East, for the moment, we are still financing Ukraine, and then, of course, we also focus on our strategic priorities. So, yes, there is financing available, but that financing has to be used in coordination and cooperation, actually, with our partners, and here EBRD is also a key partner because the funding that we have and using the different instruments and vehicles we have, we actually multiply the impact. So yes, money, but not enough. But thank you so much also for mentioning the conference in January. Indeed, I think that really kicked off also another discussion, not only about the role of Central Asia, but also the South Caucasus and how we can take forward already the project that we are developing. And having listened to you, of course, the most important is indeed to cooperate and to work together, because, of course, in the institutions we also have our ideas and our instruments on how we want to go forward. But for that, you also need the reality check of the partners on the ground. Still, having said that, I think there are huge opportunities that we have here and in the development of transport, but also, and I will come to energy as well. But of course, the first thing that we have to do, and as EU we will try to do, is to address the challenges. But those challenges we will need to also address collectively, both with the partner countries, but also with the interested financial institutions, and also with key stakeholders. And I think everybody is present in this room, so I addressed everybody in that round. And of course, to understand also, how we can increase the volumes of transport, because if you look at still the northern corridor, and we see that the volumes have dropped significantly following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, still that corridor is praised for being faster, for being cheaper, and being more predictable. So, and that really answers what we will need to focus on, which is to provide predictability, to be more cost efficient, and also time. These are key factors, and we have to work with the private sector, obviously, in this to address these constraints, and also what we mentioned, the bottlenecks, which are the capacity constraints, and also the soft connectivity measures that we also both talked about with the BRD.
Let's come back to energy in a minute. I have two audience questions about energy. So let me just ask you to save that part so that we can still go to Ekaterina and then start opening the floor for audience questions. So Ekaterina, among the topics mentioned, standardization. How can we coordinate with we know we need a number of investments and massive flows that do require de-risking involvement of international financial institutions like EBRD. How do you address the concerns that we heard from Bruce in that context?
Well, there are two elements here. First of all, of course, we would like to see deeper cooperation among countries. And we see some steps there. For example, just recently, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan established a logistics operator along the Middle Corridor. That's a very welcome step and in the right direction. So, of course, we from our side are happy to support this logistics operator and also other governments joining the initiative. So in terms of standardization, so of course this comes from the private sector. Just I would like to reiterate that the majority of investments into the Middle Corridor will be from the public sector sources, and for the private players, it would mean sort of EPC contracts, construction contracts. But if we are talking about investments from the private sector, then we are more talking about some sort of public-private partnerships, some PPP arrangements. And in this respect, of course, we are supporting the governments across the region. We are providing advisory services to basically prepare and structure bankable PPPs. And I have to say that other sister financial institutions are doing similar job, and we are willing to do it also in the Caucasus, provide such services to the governments here to basically enable environment and attract more investors. So, but we're also doing a lot ourselves as the EBRD to support investments. For example, earlier this year, we provided financing to Azeri Shipping Company to buy some vessels. Tomorrow we will be signing a road project with the Armenian government to help them connect to the Middle Corridor to build this new road. And of course, we are doing a lot in Georgia, in logistics. We are supporting the Georgian railways. A couple of years ago, we participated in the Green Bond, which was also very popular because it was green and sustainable. I have to say, green enabling projects, they attract lots of financing. And of course, we are willing to do more here also in Armenia in terms of logistics terminals, customs terminals. So again, lots of support, and we're willing to do more, here in the Caucasus and beyond along the Middle Corridor.
Thank you very much. I would like to go now to audience questions, and I do have two that have come in already on the online website, and then we'll take some live from the room. But let me just send these over to Adrian, first of all, since both of them do address energy and power. So the first one is EU electric market resilience could benefit from regional market integration. Does DG NEAR hold energy transit policy dialogue with South Caucasus actors? And I'll do that one first and then ask you the second one.
Well, actually, we do have quite good cooperation on energy with the region, and indeed we are in dialogue with the countries. And because, of course, energy, as I said, is one of the key areas that we would like to also see in our development, because obviously we need to increase our energy security and also accelerate our energy transition. So, and as a reminder, COP29 will be in a few months' time in Baku. So obviously it is a moment also for us to take stock of our commitments and to see how we stand on decarbonization. So we are actually having the dialogue with the countries. We have also a pipeline of projects. One is, for example, the Black Sea electricity cable project. It's a huge project that we will be developing, linking all the countries. But of course, we are also reflecting beyond that, and we are, of course, heavily investing in energy interconnections, but also and linking to what was said about renewable energy, also the development of renewable energy assets in the region.
And there is a second question on that point, specifically about Armenia, and it's this: what can the EU do to help Armenia be part of the Trans-Caspian Energy Corridor, which is so critical for renewable energy growth in the country, to become an exporter of power?
Actually, we in the EU and in the European Commission, we are supporting Armenia to be part of that network and also be part of the project that is being developed. Of course, it's still in its initial phase. There are a number of countries involved from the region and also from EU member states, but it is definitely something that for us it's important that Armenia is also linked in.
And Ekaterina, I have one that has just come in, which is about where EBD stands on the issue of dry ports in Armenia, whether there's any progress or project for establishing dry ports.
Okay, at the moment we're not exploring this, but we would be happy to explore. So we do dry ports in other countries. So we'd be happy if there is a project, if there is an investor, please come forward. Of course, we assume it's going to be a private sector project. Happy to consider. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. That is all that I have right now online. So who in the room would like to ask a question? We have microphone bearers on either side. Please raise your hand if you have a question. I see one back here in the third row. Did I have one over here as well? Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Jeffrey Dunn from Crude Accountability. I actually have a question for the EU representative. Sorry to make you talk more. But I'm curious if there's a conflict for the EU to take an interest in the development of Azerbaijan specifically, to see this country as a potential trade/energy route when Azerbaijan provides zero space for civil society and is one of the most authoritarian and corrupt regimes in the Caspian region. As we speak, there is a political crackdown going on. Particularly the case of Dr. Kubat Ibadoglu is prominent there, which the European Parliament has spoken on multiple times, as I'm aware. Also, the case of Azerbaijan its credentials being rejected from the Council of Europe. So I'm just curious, how do you sort of bridge the conflict there between economics and human rights? Thank you.
Of course, it's not an easy question, and of course, when we look at the region and we look at our relations with all the countries in the region, of course, all the elements of our cooperation have to be considered, and whether it is economic cooperation, but also having a political dialogue, having the dialogue on human rights and fundamental rights, it is part of our agenda. So this is not areas that we are neglecting. These are areas that we are, of course, discussing with Azerbaijan. We have actually, with my Director General, Gerten Koopman, we were in Azerbaijan actually now more than 1 week ago, and we had talks with the authorities, and these issues have been obviously raised, and they are on our agenda. We still believe that the dialogue has to be maintained, that the cooperation channels have to be kept open, and we should not shy away from discussing any topics, whether this is about the shrinking space for civil society, but still also trying to see what we can do on the economics level. So we have also discussed, of course, we have met civil society organizations to see how we can further assist them. So just to give you an answer, it's that we keep the channels of communication open, also to be able to address all issues that we have at stake.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that you will have noted that there are many civil society slots in the agenda over the course of the next 3 days. Who else would like to pose a question? Alkis, please.
We heard a lot today.
Could you just remind everyone that you are right. With the bank?
All right. I work for the EBRD. I'm Alkis Strakinos. I'm the regional director here for Caucasus. I'm based in Tbilisi. And the panel today is something that we have worked on with a very big team of the EBRD. I'm very thankful for all the panelists and being present here. So I have been impressed by our private sector participants. I think, I put down interdependence, multimodality, a lot of players. The middle corridor is a complicated and very demanding project. And the question is, would it benefit from? Who is the owner of the middle corridor? I mean, is there anyone I can talk to and say, "Are you the middle corridor? Can I ask you a question? What is your next priority?" Because it looks as if it's a system. It's a cluster of participants, stakeholders. that take initiatives, and we ourselves are not much better. We are a demand-driven institution, so there comes Masdar with an investment proposal, and we do work on renewables, and we try to connect the renewable generation in the grid and make an energy case, and then we come to Renus. Hopefully, we will be clients, or with so we are looking at these investments, but. Is there any merit in trying to coordinate? I mean, I had heard something in Brussels about this, and are we progressing?
Are we progressing? This is like the question that Kissinger posed back in the day. Where's Europe? Who can I call?
Actually, to put it on the joke side, actually, even inside the Commission, we are still discussing who should actually lead on this, because obviously we have different DGs involved, and we have, of course, DG NIR, which I represent, but we also have the Deputy Director General Marietta Jager, who is here from DG INPA, who could also, safely say that they might be in the lead. So we in the Commission, of course, see this as a joint and a team effort. We are working together to make sure that we manage to create a maximum impact and also opportunities for the regions and for the Middle Corridor. So we of course coordinate, and we have also our Eastern Partnership framework for the countries, which also provides a political framework for the cooperation. So from our side, I would say that maybe we have to increase our level of engagement and coordination, but we are definitely trying to do that in Brussels and taking forward also the initiatives that were discussed end of January in this regard. Whether we are the owners, I'm not sure, but whether we are the promoters, at least one of the promoters, I would like to say so.
Thank you. Ian, you wanted to add?
Yeah, if I may, and thank you for that. We had a meeting which was actually hosted by the Kazakh Ministry of Transport and the World Bank in, I think it was November last year. And one of the initiatives that was proposed there, but sadly nothing's come of it, was the idea that now whether it be the World Bank or the EU or EBRD, but anyway, an independent, non-partisan entity should host a forum by which private sector entities with an interest in the logistics and supply chains of this region have a voice on what does good look like, and then use the political capabilities of, be it the EU or any of these other institutions, to then bring all of the government actors within this region together to start talking about how can they align better. Because the reference was made, Catherine, you made this reference to this new joint venture between Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Kazakhstan, which is either the best news I've heard all year or the worst news I've heard all year. Because, quite frankly, if it's going to be an organization that has an overarching view on how to improve coordination and communication and support the clear transfer of information across the corridor, it's amazing. If it's going to become a monopoly, it's the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. So to me, as I say, the ability to bridge the gap between the private sector, the state players, the governments, and have somebody who can bang our heads together is really what's needed.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Or yeah, briefly, if you would. Maybe we can squeeze in one more question.
Very briefly. So,
sure.
Yeah, when you're at the table, there are several tables, and this idea with I think it's a monopoly in the end, but everyone is best friend together, and everyone wants to do that. But at the moment you go out of the room, I think today it's a race to make the claims, like in the gold area or so on. So everyone wants to become the steering party of the middle corridor, of the Trans-Caspian corridor. So you've got this organization in Astana, the TCTR, which is painting all the tracks already, but nothing goes via Uzbekistan. So Uzbekistan is very angry. Then the KTJ, so the Kazakh railway, is saying, we are doing everything from point to point, and we are the leaders of the corridor. Mm-hmm. Then the people from Azerbaijan, ADY, is saying the same. And Armenia is saying, no one is talking to us. And in Georgia is waiting what happens. And so But I can make jokes with all these countries. So just to point it out, we have to be very careful as Europeans here now that we are not in this power play in the meantime, but we should really take our power to induce some leading there. Because it's not that we are arrogant, no, but we had all this experience with 27 member states and put them then together. Everyone is diverting in every direction, but in the end, we made it happen in Europe. And just one last word is we don't need to be fast on the middle corridor. We need to be predictive. So it doesn't matter if it's 11 days or 15 days or 20 days. Yeah. It need to be 20 days all the year for many, many years. And that's the important thing. All the other rest is not important.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there one super short question still in the room that should be posed? Then I am going to ask the panel to literally in 30 seconds each tell me, looking ahead, what would be your vision for economic, social, and political integration in South Caucasus, which is exactly what you are describing. I'm hearing it needs to be systemic, it needs to move fast, but not at the price of true coordination. But Bruce, whatever it is in the energy area.
Standardization, put egos to one side, get the project done, go home, spend time with your family, save the planet.
Thank you. Heinrich, thank you.
So my biggest wish is just coming from Tbilisi this morning that Georgia is really taking the chance joining the EU in the next decade. And I hope that others will follow in the whole region so that we have got one single market that would, for the economies everywhere, be a very big push and a big growth. It will also carry Central Asia in a very, very good economic health. And that's really the wish I have today. And I hope that there will be a sustainable peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And I hope that tomorrow morning, when I switch on my radio, I can hear that there's peace between Russia and Ukraine.
Wow. Okay, that was a big agenda. Ekaterina.
We look forward to seeing more projects in the South Caucasus, in all countries, connected to Middle Corridor. And of course, the more sustainable they are, it would be easier to get financing for them. So we look forward to more sustainable projects.
Thank you very much. Ian?
Define our guiding star, and I think we all know what it is, and then put our egos aside.
Great.
For me, it's really strong dialogue, strong cooperation between all the stakeholders, whether it's public and private, so that we can leverage the potential that it is in this region.
Thank you very, very much to all of you. It's been a very thought-provoking and lively debate. Let us give them a warm round of applause, please. And dear audience, thank you so much for your attention and your participation also with the online questions. And thank you to all of our technical team and organizers who've worked so hard behind the scenes. Could we give them I wish everyone a good afternoon.